I'm getting distracted, so I must start with some fairy tales. So I'm going to start with the story of the Trobriand giant. We had a wonderful guide called Gum, and one of my great pleasures I was sitting there on the last night and asking him. I'd read about the little people on the island, and I asked him about that, and he knew all about them. So they're about this high. You very rarely saw them, but you quite often heard them. They lived in the trees, and you certainly didn't leave little children out, or they would get them. And he gave me this, which is an axe. I hope you can see it. With a carving, a stone axe with a carving of a giant. And the story he told me was that long ago, long ago, everyone lived on the, I must turn that off, has something. Long ago, everybody on the Trobriand island was happy and peaceful, and it was a good place, and it was a good life. There was lots to eat, there was lots to fish, and what more could you want? But somehow, and nobody knew how they got there, a giant and his wife and his daughter arrived, and they started farming. But the giant was enormous, and he had two great tusks, which were very ugly, and had great hands and great muscles, and he started to get a taste for human flesh, and he started to eat the people. And the people knew that they were in for trouble when they could hear his tummy rumbling in the distance like thunder, and he comes stomping over the island, picking people up and munching them. And once he got to a bay, and a family, seeing him coming, leapt into their canoe and started canoeing off, and he ran out, wading into the sea, and he picked up a canoe with all the people in it and jammed it into his mouth and munched it up. Well, it didn't take long for the island's population to shrink and shrink and shrink, and there was nothing they could do about it. So the one remaining village decided that they would all leave, and they all started getting into their canoes, and the giant started coming, he started rumbling, and he started coming across the island, and they started setting off and heading off. And there was one woman running out, trying to get on to each, trying to get on with carrying a baby, and she was trying to get onto the boats, and no one would let her. They say, wait for your husband, he's asleep, oh, wake him up, he won't drink too much, no, no room on this one, no room on this one. And the giant got closer, and the last canoe went out, and she ran, heading for the cave. This is the cave I showed you a picture of. And just as she left the village, looking behind, she could see her husband coming out of this hut, and the giant behind him, and she ran, and he ran, but he didn't get far before a great hand came down and picked him up and dropped him into his mouth. Well, she got into the cave, and she blocked the entrance, and she got in quite a deep cave, you might say, and she sort of swam through it and got right to the back, which was far beyond where the giant could reach. She lived in that cave with her son, who was called Aruako. No, it wasn't called Aruako. Sorry, I got that completely wrong. So she lived in that cave with Moby. Moby was the son. And the son, as he grew older, grew bigger and stronger. And he was furious, and he kept saying he wanted to go out and fight the giant. But his mother just laughed and said, "You can't fight the giant. The giant is too big. The giant has eaten everyone on this island. We all tried to fight it. We can't do it." But Moby was determined. And he got stronger and stronger, and he practiced making spears and throwing them. Until one day, and he, though not a giant, was enormous. One day he felt that he was so strong, he said he wanted to take on the giant. He picked up a spear and he threw it, and it went into the rock further than any spear had been. And his mother realized she couldn't contain him anymore, so she said yes. So then he hatched a plan. He found the tallest tree in the island, taller even than the giant. And he built a platform just out of the giant's arm's reach. And then he built 4 more platforms. And on each platform, he put piles of stones and piles of logs and bundles of spears. And on the top platform, starting with coconut fronds, he built a big fire ready to be lit and carefully tied the platform up with ropes that he could just cut with his stone axe in time. And then he got his mother on the top platform. And of course, in a culture which is without matches and without cigarette lighters, making fire is a tricky thing. So what they tend to do is have a ceramic vessel, a pot with a little fire burning in it. I mean, even on the sea pick, you see people going past in their canoes, and they have these little pots of fire that never goes out. So he set her up on the top platform, and then he went and built a big fire because he knew that that would make the giant think that humans were back. No sooner had the smoke started to rise than he could hear the rumbling of the giant's tummy. And he could feel the ground vibrating as the giant came, starving and wanting his favorite meal. Moby climbed up onto the first platform, and when the giant got there and saw nobody was around, he was furious. Oi! Pig-faced, ugly giant, come here and fight. Who said that? I said it, you coward, come and fight me. And Moby danced and waggled his bottom and slapped his head. Cowardly giant, come and fight me. I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to eat you. And the giant came. And it reached up, but it couldn't quite reach and opened its mouth to roar. And Moby threw all the sticks and stones into the mouth and threw spears. Oh, this angered the giant even more. I mean, even though the spears punctured his face and were as nothing, but if you imagine a load of porcupine quills being poked at your face, it's not very nice. He climbed to the tree and ripped the platform down, but Moby was on the next platform. He slapped his ass and jeered. The giant roared, and again he threw his spears and threw down the logs and the stones. When he got to the penultimate platform, looking down, he saw, as the giant opened its mouth to yell with fury, that looking down into its gullet was filled with logs, and he shouted to his mother to light the fire. And then he climbed up and he threw more spears down, and the giant roared, and he cut the ropes, and the fire descended into the giant's mouth, and it spread throughout all the logs that he'd eaten and burnt him up inside, and he fell down and died. Well, they lived happily ever after. And they're still there.